People think I'm rebuilding my life, but the truth is I'm living with a secret that could ruin everyone around me. I can't tell if I was his partner in crime, or just another victim. Welcome to Reddit Toxic Family Telltales channel. New episode every day. Dinner was supposed to be calm. Just a simple family meal, nothing dramatic. But then my grandmother casually asked how the bakery was doing. The bakery she said she invested $50,000 in. I froze. My fork stopped midair. Bakery? I repeated, trying to process what she'd just said. Grandma, we don't have a bakery. She looked at me like I was the crazy one. Of course we do. Sullivan showed me the business plan 6 months ago. I even wrote him a check. He sends me updates, pictures of ovens being installed, counters being built. My blood went cold. I turned to my husband Sullivan, and he looked like a deer in headlights, fumbling with his napkin, trying desperately to steer the conversation somewhere else. But Grandma wasn't letting go. I excused myself, saying I needed the bathroom. In reality, I stormed straight into Sullivan's office, ignoring him calling after me. My heart was hammering so hard it felt like everyone in the house could hear it. That's when I found it. A bank statement. $50,000 deposited, then gone. Split into 5 cashier's checks. Each written out to women I'd never heard of. I typed one of the names into Facebook. And there she was. A woman posting about taking Sullivan to court for child support. And right there in her photos was a baby who looked exactly like him. When I confronted him later after Grandma had left, Sullivan didn't even try to lie. He admitted everything. 5 women. 5 children. 5 secret families he'd been juggling for years. While I thought he was away on business trips, he was really rotating between these families, slipping into their lives like some twisted salesman of deception. He described them to me like a twisted roll call. Phoenix, twin boys a year and a half old. Denver, a 2-year-old girl. Salt Lake City, a 3-month-old boy. Portland, a daughter just over a year. And in Las Vegas, one woman 8 months pregnant with his next son. Each woman thought she'd found her soulmate. Each one believed he was single, wealthy, some big-shot entrepreneur looking for love. And the $10,000 he gave each of them? Hush money. A down payment to keep them quiet instead of dragging him into court. He even sent them all an extra $500 a month. No wonder we'd been living paycheck to paycheck despite his promotion. I felt sick as he showed me a hidden folder on his phone labeled work projects. Except the photos weren't of work. They were birthday parties. Christmas mornings. Him cradling newborns in hospital rooms. Dozens of photos with kids who shared his exact eyes, his exact smirk. Each woman had her own fantasy of a future with him. One thought he was investing in her bakery. That explained the photos he sent Grandma. Another believed he was opening a wellness center. Another thought he was buying her hotel. He dangled dreams in front of them, promising, once this deal closes, we'll finally be together. But then I asked him the one question that made my voice shake. What happens when you can't pay them anymore? He went pale. And then he whispered that he was already 2 months behind. Worse? They knew. They had already found each other online, connecting through tagged locations and mutual friends. They'd started a group chat. 5 mothers, 5 children who all looked exactly like him. They'd pieced it all together, his real name, our address, even Grandma's Facebook post bragging about our bakery. And that's when my world tilted again. Because while I'd been confronting him, Sullivan had been texting them. Not just texting, framing me. He told them I was the mastermind. That I'd stolen their child support money. That the bakery scam was my idea. They're all coming, Sullivan said, phone buzzing in his hand. His voice trembled, but then he smiled, a smile I'd never seen before. But I won't be here when they arrive. He grabbed a duffel bag I hadn't noticed before, along with his passport. And right then, headlights cut across the window. A minivan pulled up. Then another car. I whispered, that's them. Sullivan just smirked. I told them you knew about everything. That you have their money hidden. They're coming for you. The doorbell rang. Once. Twice. Then pounding fists joined in, shaking the whole door. Babies were crying outside. I could see 3 women on my porch, one juggling twin toddlers, another balancing a toddler on her hip, another pushing a stroller. Panic took over. My hands shook as I dialed 911, telling the operator there were multiple angry people outside, and I was terrified. She told me to stay inside, lock the doors, and wait for the police. But the pounding grew louder. Voices screamed about money, about stolen futures. I ran upstairs, frantically shoving clothes into a bag, stuffing Sullivan's bank statements and every document I could grab into my laptop case. Through the window, I spotted my neighbor Parker standing on his porch, phone out, recording everything. He looked at me and mouthed, got it all. Moments later, flashing red and blue lights lit up the street. Police pulled up, separating the crowd. Babies wailed as officers tried calming the chaos. Officer Martinez came to my door. I let him in with shaking hands, showing him Sullivan's texts, proof that my husband had been lying to everyone. Martinez photographed everything, listened as I explained about the $50,000, about the 5 families, about the scam. Outside, I could hear one of the women sobbing about her bakery, crying that she'd believed in him. The officers took statements from everyone. Slowly, the women packed up their babies, strapping them back into car seats. But their eyes burned holes through me as they left, eyes full of betrayal, rage, and grief. And I knew this wasn't over. Because Sullivan was gone. And I was left holding the wreckage. The second the last tail light faded down the street, I turned my house into a command center. I planted myself at the kitchen table, cracked my knuckles, and started changing every password I could remember. Banking, credit cards, email, social. If an app even looked like it could move money, it got a new password, something Sullivan would never guess in a million years, even if he suddenly became psychic. Then I called the credit card companies, one by one like a grim little roll call. Chase, I said, voice steady even though my hands were shaking. I answered security questions, explained there might be fraud, and the woman on the line put a hold on everything until I could come in with ID. American Express? Same story, frozen. Discover? They listened, paused, and canceled the card outright when I told them about the hidden families. I almost laughed. Finally, someone was willing to slam a door shut. Meanwhile, my fingers flew across the keyboard. I took screenshots of every account balance, every transaction history, every business trip email Sullivan had sent me. Hotel receipts from cities I'd never visited. Restaurant charges at places I'd never heard of. Daycare payments. Care. Payments. Each new discovery was a fresh punch to the ribs. I built an evidence folder on my desktop and fed it like a beast, subfolders labeled by date, bank, account number. I printed everything and highlighted the important lines in neon yellow until the pages looked like they'd been dipped in sunlight. By midnight I had 3 fat folders stacked beside me, and my eyes burned from the screen, but I kept going. Because underneath the shaking and the fury was a clear little voice telling me, "You're going to need every scrap of this." And sure enough, more snakes slithered out. A Walmart card with a $3,000 balance. A Home Depot card maxed at $5,000. An online personal loan for $15,000 past due. I could practically feel my pulse in my gums. But I documented it all. Click. Save. Print. Highlight. Repeat. At 2 a.m. something in me snapped. I couldn't spend another minute inside the house where he'd staged his little magic show. I threw clothes and those evidence folders into the car and drove to the Super 8 on the edge of town. Paid cash for 3 nights. The room smelled like old cigarettes and the bedspread had stains I refused to assign a backstory to, but there was a deadbolt and Sullivan didn't know I was there. That was enough. I texted my neighbor Parker, watching the house? He might show up. Or the moms might come back. He replied in seconds, already installed a camera facing your driveway. I'll call if anything happens. Of course he had. If Neighborhood Watch gave out badges, Parker would wear 3. Then the question I'd been trying to avoid walked right into my brain and sat down. Why did Sullivan send those women to my door and then run? He knew I knew. He confessed. Why frame me as the mastermind at the exact moment he bolted with a passport and a pre-packed duffel? It wasn't panic. It felt calculated. Like he'd been engineering this exit for months, right down to the timing of the doorbell. I lay on the stiff motel bed and did the worst possible thing for my blood pressure. I started scrolling through divorce attorney websites. One name kept popping up, Deborah Crowley. Every review said the same thing: complicated financial divorces, hidden assets, fraud, she's your shark. Her office opened at 8. I set an alarm for 7:30 and didn't sleep a second. Instead, I read about community property, marital waste, how courts view spouses who lie about money. 10 out of 10 would not recommend as a bedtime story. At exactly 8 a.m., I called Deborah's office and left a detailed voicemail. 5 secret families, $50,000 stolen from my grandmother, multiple states, possible elder abuse. The receptionist called back at 9:15. Deborah can see you today at 2, she said. Bring every financial document you can access and a written timeline. So I camped out in the motel's business center, 2 aging PCs and a printer that sounded like it smoked in college, and spent the morning printing bank statements and typing dates. I started my timeline from 2 years ago when Sullivan's work travel began and matched each trip to an expense. Receipts don't lie. People do. Deborah's office sat in a glass tower downtown. Modern furniture, abstract art that probably cost more than my car, and not a single scuff on the floor. Deborah herself listened without interrupting, pen moving briskly across a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she looked up and didn't waste a beat. "We're filing for a restraining order today," she said. "Before he drains anything we haven't found. Also, we'll include elder financial abuse. That's serious. It strengthens your case." 5 minutes later, I was in the passenger seat of her Mercedes while she explained the filing process like she'd done it in her sleep. At the courthouse, the family court clerk took our stack of paperwork and said a judge would review the request within 24 hours, maybe sooner given the circumstances. Deborah guided me form by form, showing me where to sign and initial, translating legalese into plain English. Next stop, the police station. I filed a formal report about Grandma's $50,000 with Detective Kendrick Dri. Tall, kind eyes, the calm of a man who's seen every flavor of financial disaster. He flipped through my documents, took notes, and opened an official case file with a reference number I wrote down 3 times. "Multiple victims across Phoenix, Denver, Salt Lake City, Portland, Vegas," he said. "Crossing state lines complicates jurisdiction, but I'll start coordinating with those departments." He handed me his direct number. "If he contacts you or you find new accounts, call me." On the drive back to the motel, I called my boss and asked for a few days off for a family emergency. She said she understood, but I could hear that ripple of worry in her voice. I didn't blame her. I sounded like a walking headline. That evening, I sat on the motel bed with a carton of cold lo mein and my laptop balanced on my knees when my phone buzzed with a notification that turned my stomach to glass. I'd been added to a group chat, Sullivan's victims. 5 bubbles popped up, messages flying faster than I could read. Phoenix wrote about the $20,000 he promised for new ovens. Denver dropped screenshots where he swore he'd already bought her a building for her wellness center. I jumped in, uploading bank statements with dates and dollar amounts, showing the exact withdrawals from Grandma's account. Then Portland sent voice messages. Sullivan had shown her fake divorce papers, with my forged signature. I started matching their dates to my timeline, tying each work trip to a city, to a woman, to a charge on a card he shouldn't have had. Salt Lake City posted photos from her baby shower 3 months ago, the same weekend he told me he was in Seattle for a conference. Of course. Receipts, screenshots, PDFs, voice notes. The chat filled with evidence like a dam had broken. Denver uploaded a polished fake business plan with projected profits and her listed as managing director. Phoenix shared recordings of him promising $30,000 for her bakery expansion, once the divorce is final. His voice was syrupy and sure, the same tone he used when he told me he loved me. And then someone sent an audio file from 3 months ago that made my whole body go cold. Sullivan's voice spilled into my motel room, telling one of the mothers about his crazy wife who controlled all the money and wouldn't let him see his kids. He called me unstable, violent, dangerous if he tried to leave. I ended up in the bathroom, dry heaving over a sink that had seen better decades. He hadn't just cheated, he'd been campaigning, planting stories, seeding doubt, building an alibi before I even knew there was a crime. Back at the desk, I kept uploading documents. The mothers kept digging. Bank records, credit statements, hotel receipts from his visits. It was like watching a puzzle assemble itself in real time, and the picture was a monster wearing my husband's face. My phone rang. Detective DRI. I need copies of everything from that group chat, he said. We're building the case. I've already reached out to Phoenix and Denver. Keep documenting. Save multiple copies. And if he contacts you, call me immediately. For the next hour, I forwarded screenshots and audio files, labeled them by city and date, zipped folders, and hit send. The women kept sharing. The timeline grew teeth. And just when I thought my adrenaline had finally burned out, my screen lit up with a new message, one that didn't come from the group chat, or from Deborah, or from Kendrick. Unknown number. One sentence. Nice try, but you won't find the rest. I stared at those words, the room humming with the cheap AC, and felt the floor tip again. Because if there was the rest, what had I missed? And how much time did I have before he made it disappear? The next morning, I drove straight to Grandma's house. She was waiting at her kitchen table, papers spread out like battle plans in front of her. But what stopped me cold wasn't the stack of documents, it was her face. She looked older. Like the weight of betrayal had carved new lines overnight. Her hands trembled as she signed the formal complaint, her voice breaking when she told the notary how Sullivan had tricked her with fake bakery photos, fake blueprints, fake profit projections typed up on his laptop. I just wanted to help you build a future, she whispered, tears dripping onto the pages as she initialed each statement. I held her hand while she signed, but she kept apologizing, over and over, for being so foolish, for trusting him when something in her gut had told her something was off. I squeezed her fingers tight and told her this wasn't her fault, that Sullivan had fooled all of us. But she just shook her head and said, I should have known better. On the drive back to the motel, my phone buzzed with a bank alert that made me swerve to the shoulder. Sullivan had drained a savings account I didn't even know existed, another $8,000 gone, withdrawn just hours ago from an ATM 3 states away. I called Deborah instantly. She promised to file emergency motions within the hour to freeze everything we hadn't already caught, though we both knew the $8,000 was probably gone forever. Meanwhile, the group chat with the mothers had turned into a full-blown investigation unit. They were tearing through Sullivan's social media, finding tagged locations, check-ins he'd forgotten to hide. They tracked him through airline rewards accounts and hotel loyalty points, piecing together his travel schedule with terrifying accuracy. Phoenix found his frequent flyer account showing monthly flights to each of their cities, booked with company cards. Denver uncovered hotel stays charged to our joint credit card, ones I'd never seen because Sullivan always handled the bills. They mapped it out like a calendar. Phoenix on the first weekend. Denver on the second. Salt Lake City on the third. Portland on the fourth. Vegas squeezed in on emergency work nights. Then the Portland woman dropped the photo that shattered me. Sullivan at her daughter's first birthday party, wearing a cone-shaped party hat, baby girl in his arms, chocolate cake smeared across both their faces. The timestamp? The same night as our anniversary dinner, the night he left early claiming his boss had called with an emergency. My stomach lurched. I barely made it to the motel bathroom before I was bent over the toilet, heaving until there was nothing left. That evening, Deborah texted, our restraining order hearing was set for 9 o'clock the next morning. She warned me the mothers might show up, since the hearing was public record. My hands shook as I read it, imagining facing them in person. I didn't sleep. Instead, I scrolled through the group chat while they uploaded more evidence, more lies, more documents, more pieces of the double life Sullivan had orchestrated. At dawn, I slipped into my only clean dress, gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, and drove to the courthouse. In the hallway, I saw the Phoenix and Denver women with their lawyers, babies on their laps. They didn't approach me, but Phoenix looked up and gave me a small nod. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a silent acknowledgement. Victim to victim. When the bailiff called our case, I walked into the courtroom beside Deborah, my legs shaking like they might give out. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair pulled into a bun, flipped through our stack of documents. Her eyes widened slightly when she reached the part about 5 secret families and $50,000 stolen from my grandmother. Then the Phoenix and Denver women stood, identifying themselves as additional victims. For 20 minutes, the judge grilled me. Dates, bank statements, Sullivan's texts, photos of him with other children. Deborah explained how he'd fled, framing me as the mastermind to cover his escape. The judge's expression hardened when she saw those texts, Sullivan's lies against the truth of where the money actually went. Finally, she signed the restraining order with quick, decisive strokes. Valid for 1 year, she said firmly, enforceable wherever Mr. Sullivan can be located. It should have felt like a victory. Deborah squeezed my shoulder as we left, but all I could think was he was still out there. With our money. With a head start. 2 hours later, Officer Martinez met me at the house so I could gather more belongings and document what Sullivan had taken. His closet was half empty, suits gone, expensive watches gone, the leather briefcase I'd given him for his birthday missing. The safe was wide open, our $8,000 emergency cash gone, passports missing, except mine, tossed on the floor like garbage. In the garage, his golf clubs were missing, his mountain bike, the tools from his workbench. I snapped photos while Martinez took notes, cataloging the hollow spaces where his life used to be. Then my phone rang. HR. The woman's voice was stiff, uncomfortable. Someone's been posting about you on social media, she said. Accusing you of fraud and theft. The posts have been screenshot and shared with senior management. We need to meet with you tomorrow. I hung up and just stared at the wall, sick to my stomach. Sullivan wasn't just running, he was still attacking me, even from the shadows. That evening I was lying on the motel bed, exhaustion pressing down on me, when Grandma's number flashed on my phone. Relief surged until I answered. Instead of her voice, I heard crying. Beeping machines. Then a nurse. Your grandmother's been admitted to the ER with chest pains. She asked us to call you. I drove like a woman possessed, hands trembling so hard I could barely grip the wheel. The ER was packed, but they ushered me back when I said her name. She looked so small in that hospital bed, wires running across her chest, and 4 taped to her thin arm. When she saw me, she reached out with tears on her cheeks. I'm so sorry, she kept whispering. I should never have trusted him. I should never have given him that money. I held her hand and promised it wasn't her fault, even though the guilt etched itself into every line of her face. The doctor came in after running tests. It wasn't a heart attack, he said, but a severe anxiety episode. It mimicked cardiac symptoms. Her blood pressure is dangerously high. She needs to reduce stress immediately. Reduce stress. I almost laughed. How? He prescribed medication, ordered her kept overnight for observation, warned that another episode could cause real damage. I sat by her bed for hours, holding her hand while she drifted in and out of sleep, whispering promises I didn't know how to keep. Then my phone buzzed. Detective Kendrick. I've got news, he said. His voice was steady, but the words made my stomach turn. We have ATM footage from a casino in Reno 2 days ago. It's Sullivan. He maxed out the daily withdrawal limit at 3 different machines. He's building a cash reserve and staying on the move. We're working with Nevada authorities, but this might take time. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tight. Sullivan wasn't gone. He was out there. And he was planning something. 3 days later, I was back in the wreckage of Sullivan's home office, clearing out drawers and trying not to breathe in the stale cologne trapped in the carpet. I tugged open the bottom drawer and my knuckles brushed something rough underneath. Tape. I slid my fingers along the underside and peeled out a tiny USB drive, the kind you could lose between couch cushions forever. For a split second I pictured jamming it into my laptop and finally getting answers. Then Deborah's voice cut through my adrenaline, don't access potential evidence yourself. I set it on a sticky note like it was radioactive, grabbed my keys and drove straight to the station. Detective Kendrick met me at the door, calm as ever, and walked the drive to digital forensics while I sat in his office nursing a styrofoam cup of coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard. An hour later, he came back with a stack of printouts and a face that told me to brace myself. 6 credit cards, 6, opened in my name over the past 2 years. Maxed out with cash advances and purchases. Over $30,000 in debt I hadn't even known existed. On the USB were scanned applications with my forged signature, my social, our address, statements routed to an email I'd never seen. The charges told the rest of the story. Hotels in cities where his other families lived, fancy dinners, jewelry that definitely never landed on my dresser, baby store receipts time-stamped around each due date. That night, I went to war with the credit bureaus. Fraud alerts on all accounts. Disputes for every charge. Over and over, I told the story to new voices across long holds and bad transfers. One company demanded a police report just for their fraud. Another insisted on a notarized affidavit. A third wanted to talk to Sullivan, despite the restraining order. By dawn, I'd cleared only 3 of the 6, my voice ragged and my eyes burning as statement after statement reminded me how deep his lies went. The mother's group chat pinged awake with the sunrise. They were in full-on tactical mode, sharing child support forms and legal aid links for their states. Phoenix had already filed and posted a checklist. Denver found a free clinic for interstate cases. Portland discovered Oregon's online filing system and dropped the link. Salt Lake struggled with forms for unmarried parents, so Vegas hopped on video to walk her through Nevada's version. I watched in awe as they divided and conquered, each woman owning her state's maze and clearing a path for the others. Within 3 days, all 5 had filed official claims naming Sullivan as the father. They attached photos from his hidden folder, plus texts where he'd acknowledged the kids. A paper trail of truth. While I was boxing up kitchen stuff at the house, Phoenix called me directly. Her voice was softer than the night on my porch. She apologized for believing Sullivan's mastermind story about me. Then she sent photos of her real bakery, yellow awnings, glass cases lined with cupcakes, hand-painted menu boards. Not the industrial fantasy he'd shown Grandma. She'd already put deposits down for a second location because of his promises. I worked 12-hour days for 5 years, she said. I believed him because I wanted it to be true. I pressed the phone to my ear and whispered, me too. Right then my laptop chimed. An email from an address I didn't recognize with a subject line that was just my name, screamed in all caps. The message was 3 pages of Sullivan playing martyr. He claimed I'd known all along that I was trying to ruin an innocent man, that I'd helped him raise money from the other women and was now pretending to be a victim. He threatened to send proof to my employer and family, edited screenshots to frame me as the architect of it all. I forwarded it to Deborah with a shaking hand. She replied within the hour, documented as harassment and a restraining order violation, added to the prosecutor's file. One more log on the fire. 2 days later, Grandma asked me to come over. Her attorney, an older man who'd known her for 30 years, had spread papers across her kitchen table. Grandma signed a detailed affidavit describing everything, how Sullivan pitched the bakery, the fake plans, the staged construction photos, the updates he brought like gifts. Her hand trembled but her jaw set like stone. The attorney patted her shoulder and promised to fight for every dollar. We spent 3 hours cataloging texts, photos, and bank records until the numbers swam and the words blurred. Exhausted? Yes. Done? Not even close. The district attorney's office called the next week. They were reviewing the case but warned criminal charges would take months. Phoenix, Denver, Salt Lake City, Portland, Las Vegas, every jurisdiction had a claim, and they needed an airtight strategy that wouldn't fall apart in court. They assigned a junior prosecutor who sounded overwhelmed, asking me to repeat timelines and addresses until I could recite them in my sleep. Meanwhile, my money was evaporating. Deborah's retainer, motel bills, expedited filings, I watched my cards creep toward their limits. I spent a day calling creditors, asking for mercy. 3 companies eventually offered reduced payments after passing me around like a hot potato. The 4th demanded to speak to Sullivan again. The 5th sent me hunting for a special fraud department and required notarized documents. The 6th agreed to a plan but warned my credit would take the hit anyway. Every call felt like peeling back another layer of humiliation. 2 weeks in, I went back to work. The break room went silent when I walked past, whispers hanging in the air like steam. I ate at my desk, head down, pretending I didn't notice. That afternoon, my supervisor tapped on my cubicle and spoke quietly. Messy divorce here too, she said. Hidden gambling debts. Take the time you need for court. We'll adjust your schedule. I blinked back tears I didn't want to spill in a gray cubicle. That evening, Parker texted me a video file, the footage he'd shot from his porch the night the mothers came. You could see me with my hands raised, trying to calm everyone while voices crashed over the porch. You could hear me say I was a victim too. He'd already given a copy to the police and offered to testify. I didn't know whether to hug him or cry again, so I whispered thank you into my quiet motel room. The next morning, Kendrick called with a jolt of news that made me sit down on the bed. Sullivan had been pulled over for a broken taillight in a county 3 hours away. When they ran his license, the restraining order warrant pinged. He was in temporary custody, but they needed the right paperwork to hold him beyond 72 hours. The mothers and I sprang into action, flooding that county with complaints, child support filings, and fraud documents. Then came the tug of war. The holding county wanted to prosecute the restraining order violation. Phoenix wanted him for Grandma's fraud. Denver pressed failure to support. Portland argued their fraud case had the strongest paper trail because the mother there had lost her apartment after his promises collapsed. Vegas emphasized the urgency with a current pregnancy and medical bills. Salt Lake City had proof he'd used a fake name on a birth certificate, a felony there. We spent hours on conference calls while prosecutors from 6 jurisdictions debated who had the cleanest shot. Everyone wanted him. No one wanted to let go. So we built the mother of all case files. We started a shared drive and uploaded everything: texts, bank statements, photos of Sullivan at birthdays, baby showers, hospital rooms. The Salt Lake mom found statements showing he bought 2 engagement rings with my Amazon account. Denver unearthed forms where he used 3 different social security numbers. We stitched together 4 years of his whereabouts day by day. Then Portland discovered he'd claimed her daughter as a dependent on his taxes while I filed as childless. Tax fraud joined the charge sheet. Deborah called me in on a Tuesday, spreading civil suit paperwork across her desk. We file now, she said, or we'll be behind a line of creditors. The fee alone was $800. I borrowed from my retirement. Even if we win, she warned, there may be nothing to seize. We filed anyway. Grandma's insurer needed documentation, so did the IRS. Sometimes you swing because standing still isn't an option. That weekend, I returned to the house with Parker and 3 liquor store boxes. I stripped Sullivan's side of the closet, stuffing clothes into trash bags, his lucky golf shirt, the suit from our wedding, the cologne bottles he lined up like trophies. At the pawn shop, the owner peered at my wedding ring through his little lens and offered $400. I'd paid $3,000 6 years ago. I took the cash without looking back. The donation center accepted 6 bags of clothes, his golf clubs, and the watch I'd saved for to give him on our anniversary. Each bag I handed over felt like cutting away dead tissue. My phone pinged. Portland's judge had approved her child support order. $300 a month. Not much, but a legal foothold. She sent the order. We all borrowed the language. 2 days later, Deborah had separation papers ready. Asset protection. Clear financial fences. My hand didn't shake as I signed page after page. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spine growing where panic had lived. Back at the motel that night, I pulled out our photo albums. I made 2 piles. Friends and family? Keep. My sister's wedding? Keep. Anything with Sullivan? Tear. Our honeymoon in Hawaii gone. Christmas mornings with his family deleted and ripped. The company picnic where he won the 3-legged race, shredded into confetti the size of truths I no longer owed him. I worked until 3 a.m., reclaiming my life one torn page at a time. The next week, we were back in court for the protective order extension. I brought printouts of the fake Facebook profiles that had messaged me, logs of the hang-up calls to my office. The judge extended the order for a full year and added provisions against digital contact and workplace harassment. Paper shields, but shields nonetheless. Saturday, Grandma introduced me to a financial advisor from her church. We sat at her kitchen table again, going through spreadsheets instead of recipes. Without the $50,000, we had to restructure everything. The boat would go. Probably the cabin too. But the numbers could still stand if we leaned into them hard enough. Grandma squeezed my hand. We didn't say out loud whose fault it was. We didn't need to. The next weekend, Parker showed up with his truck and helped me move into a studio I could finally afford. One room, a kitchenette, a bathroom the size of a broom closet. We used milk crates as shelves and his old card table as my dining set. He hung a bedsheet over the window and joked that at least my new neighbors were honest about their crimes, unlike Sullivan. I laughed for the first time in days. Monday, Phoenix called with news that actually made me smile. Sullivan had landed a job at a car dealership 3 states over, long enough for the court to start wage garnishment. Her first payment arrived, $80. A beginning is a beginning. She texted instructions for the rest of us, and we filed garnishment requests with the court in his new county. 3 months crawled by. I took every extra shift at the hospital, doubles on weekends, cover anything weekdays. My credit score fell 200 points from the fraudulent accounts. Still, each charge I got removed felt like a small metal pin to my chest. I kept a notebook, names, dates, case numbers, because paperwork mysteriously vanished all the time. One Tuesday, Phoenix suggested a group video call. For the first time, I actually wanted to see everyone's faces. Saturday night, 5 little squares blinked to life, 6, if you counted the newborn cradled on Vegas's shoulder. We sat in silence for a minute, just looking at each other. Then Denver broke the dam, laughing that Sullivan swore he was allergic to shellfish, but she'd seen a photo of him eating shrimp with me. Portland said he'd told her he was deathly allergic to cats, then found our Christmas card with our 2 cats in Santa hats. We compared lies for an hour, crying laughing when 3 of us revealed he'd claimed to be a college football star. I flashed his yearbook where he was proudly listed as chess club treasurer. Denver proposed a book, The 6 Wives of Sullivan. Honestly? Bestseller material. Grandma's doctor called the next week, blood pressure back in normal range, 5 pounds regained. She joined a support group for seniors scammed by family, made friends with a woman named Dorothy whose grandson stole her identity to buy a boat. Every Thursday they got coffee and traded battle stories, turning grief into a strange little lifeline. At work, my supervisor pulled me aside after a staff meeting. She offered me the lead position in our department. The raise was only $3,000 a year, but it meant steady day shifts and no more holiday scrambles. I celebrated by buying a used couch off Craigslist to retire the milk crates. Parker hauled it up 3 flights and claimed I owed him takeout for life. 6 months after that terrible Christmas dinner, all 5 mothers had court-ordered support. Sullivan faced fraud charges in 3 jurisdictions. Phoenix sent photos of her twins smashing cupcakes at her bakery's real grand reopening, funded by a legitimate investor from her business group. Denver earned her real estate license and was closing deals. Salt Lake got promoted to regional manager. Portland launched a daycare. Vegas went back to school for nursing while her mom watched the baby. Grandma and I started Sunday dinners again, simple pasta, salad, quiet laughter. She told stories about my grandpa and the hard years they survived, squeezing my hand and telling me I was stronger than she'd ever been. Our group chat stayed busy, renamed Phoenix rising after a vote that beat out Sullivan survivors by a landslide. We swapped job wins, first steps, first words, screenshots of Sullivan's latest fake accounts trying to fish for attention. Parker started coming by twice a week with takeout, spreading out paperwork, cracking jokes about being present the night my life exploded, and somehow still thinking I was worth sticking around for. We took it slow, movies, dinners, the kind of quiet that doesn't require rescuing. He teased that most people hide their baggage at the start of dating. I dumped mine on his lawn with 5 furious mothers and 2 squad cars. Nowhere to go but up, he grinned. For the first time in forever, it felt like my life was rebuilding, tiny brick by tiny brick. But just as the dust began to settle and I started to believe in ordinary days again, the next twist landed in my inbox, subject line blank, sender unknown, and I knew the storm wasn't finished with me yet. Thanks for watching. Today's train wreck is over, but tomorrow's ride is already on track. Subscribe so you don't miss it.